All right, Marginal Gainers, we have a great show for you today. As you can probably see, Rob Britton is here. Rob is a SILCA athlete. He writes for Factor, and he's here to tell us about an extraordinary and difficult event I think you're going to get a lot out of, because Rob had to obviously get prepared for this long one-day event, and there were some interesting marginal gains going on there. We're going to get to those in a second. We do want to remind you that, of course, Marginal Gains is brought to you by SILCA, creators of the finest pumps and tools and hot wax and sealant, et cetera, for bicycles. We are also supported by Shimano, creators of the finest components and bicycles and more, like sunglasses. Yes, Shimano has shades. In fact, they have been updating their shade technology. Their top-of-the-line S-Fire sunglasses now have ride-scape lenses. The idea here is to have lenses that are designed to certain landscapes and being able to emphasize what you're seeing and hopefully shade out what you don't want to see. Each lens will do that and do it quite well. In fact, I put these glasses on at Sea Otter, and man, they were great. So if you are in need of a new pair or better pair of sunglasses, check out the new Ridescape lenses from Shimano at bike.shimano.com. All right, we're here again. Rob Britton is here with us. Rob, thanks for being on the show. You wrote something. I went to the Badlands website, Rob, and this is what it says right on the front page. It says, the weirdest gravel challenge in Western Europe. The weirdest. Was it weird?
Weird. It was hard. It was definitely hard.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't say weird is the most accurate descriptive word for Badlands.
Yeah, hard for sure. You were out there for 38 hours, 20 minutes, 750 kilometers, 466 miles for the folks here in the U.S., 49,000 feet of climbing, which is 15,000 meters of going up. Those are some impressive stats. Now, for the folks who hopefully you're aware of Rob, I mean, Rob is a familiar name to folks who follow road racing, especially in North America. He spent 10 years as a pro road racer on several teams. Rob, some impressive wins for you. I mean, Tour of Utah was a big deal, winning GC there. Tour of Gila, you're the Canadian time trial champion. So some great results for you as a pro roadie. And now Rob has made the transition to the multi-surface road. We're not going to call it gravel, Rob. We'll call it the multi-surface world here of dirt and tarmac. And one of the things you decided to pick out this year for your schedule, for your calendar, is Badlands. So tell us about Badlands. Like, what did you know about Badlands prior to 2023?
So Badlands kind of came onto my radar when Lachlan Morton did it in, I think, 2020 or 2021, kind of around that kind of COVID early onset stuff. And Auckland's usually got a pretty good radar for some pretty crazy hard stuff. And so it's been on my radar since then. I was curious about it last year, but I just, that was so far beyond my capacity to even consider doing Badlands. I was just trying to survive that first season of gravel. But at the end of last year, it was something I really wanted to do. In 2022, I did the BC Epic. So that was 1,000 kilometers, so like straight shot. And to this day, it's still probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But yeah, I applied for Badlands. I guess it opens up in November or something like this, the application. And I got in, which was, pretty exciting for me. And to this point, to the point, like I still haven't, that was the only, ultra gravel event I've done. So it's been on my radar for a while, but it's the only, big one that I've done so far.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what was your longest one-day event prior to Badlands?
The BC Epic, course, I guess. I wouldn't say it was a one-day event or necessarily in a race. It's just an FKT. And that was just under 1,100 kilometers. And I did that more or less straight through. I slept for under 2 hours for the whole thing. That was, I want to say, like 53 hours or something like this. Is definitely significant. And I was crippled. That took me like 3 or 4 weeks to come back from. And then this summer I did another one. It was across Vancouver Island, just over 700K. And that was a lot smoother. I mean, it sounds funny, like at a glance, 700K and 1,000K, like 500 miles and 650 miles seem really similar, but that's a significant difference. That's like an extra 12 or 14 hours of riding. And your body falls apart at like an exponential rate when you go over those distances.
So paint us a picture of Badlands. Like, where is this place? I'm sure our folks in the United Kingdom probably know approximately where it is. I don't know if our listeners in Australia do. Where is this? What's the terrain like?
So Badlands it basically goes around the Sierra Nevadas in southern Spain. So the start is in Granada. So it's pretty central South Spain. And then it does kind of a big loop. There's no out and backs, nothing like this. And you don't actually finish back in Granada. It's sort of cruel. You finish... and you still have to either climb over a mountain to get back, and it's like 100K and like a couple thousand meters of climbing, or you can drive back, which I'm not sure which is more uncomfortable looking back. But so it's around Sierra Nevada. The landscape, generally speaking, is dry and sandy, and you get it's incredible some of these places you ride. It's like riding almost through like the Grand Canyon at times, like just this really big kind of erosion valley, and you climb over, I don't think you climb over the Sierra Nevadas, but you're climbing over kind of the foothills around them. And, you go up to 2,000 meters. I think that's kind of the highest point. But I didn't see a lot of that because the highest points in the ride kind of came during night. Because you go straight through. So, we climbed over some high stuff, but it was just in the dark. So I don't exactly know what it looked like, but it is beautiful. And you eventually work your way all the way down to like Almeria on the coast. So you go through Almeria, which is like I've raced through there. Funny enough, I had like my second fastest Strava times on this section on the coast because we'd raced there in to Almeria, like probably 2019 or something like this with Rally, kind of my former life. So, it was kind of funny just thinking, and this is like at dawn, right? Like at 7 a.m. thinking, I think I've ridden here before. So that was kind of trippy. You get just a really cool, like selection of all sorts of different stuff from pavement, different kinds of gravel, some pretty gnarly stuff too. It's definitely not just cruisy all the time. And then, everything in between. And then this year, just for good laughs, it rained more or less on and off for the first 13 or 14 hours. And they hadn't had rain in probably 3 months prior. So then we also had mud to deal with, which they haven't had for years. So that was a unique challenge too.
Was it temperature wise? Was it hot, or what was the feeling on race day?
Because it's like the race is like for the front runners, like, a day and a half long, like 36 or 38 hours. You kind of get everything. I think, in years past, it's basically just been hot and dry or cool and dry as they go up high. But we had, like I said, rain pretty much right off the gun. It was raining in and like raining hard, like soaking you through. So I'm not great with Fahrenheit, but it was like the first day, the high was probably only 22 or 23 degrees Celsius and pouring rain on and off. But then it dropped down to like 8 degrees Celsius over the top of these mountains, and you're still wet. So you have to really kind of nail it. Like I brought some good, proper like clothes from Castelli that kept me warm and dry. And then the next day down on the coast, once that overcast finally burnt off, it went from being really like kind of muggy to just, it got super hot, like to like, I think it went 40 degrees was the hottest I saw in my head unit. So when it hit that, I was on this just god awful climb. I swear it was like 20% for 5 kilometers. And I was just like, you're just winching your way up this thing and like pouring sweat. So for about a day, you're either wet from rain or wet from sweat. You're just never dry.
Rough. So, I mean, Rob's from Canada. Saskatchewan is his birthplace. Western Canada, British Columbia is where he's. Rob, have you ever seen any? I've seen pictures now, Badlands, and I'm like, wow, what is that moonscape? Have you ever been to any other place, seen any other place like this place?
No, it's pretty unique. Yeah, save like just like everybody else. Like I've seen these photos, but actually being there, it was definitely an event where, because you're not going full gas, you have to be concentrated. Obviously, it's difficult, but I really, really wanted to actually absorb it and take it in, because I spent a career just like passing through stuff, and you don't ever see anything. Raced all over the world, and I don't remember any of it. You remember the finish line, and like maybe once in a while you poke your head up and look at a mountain, but you're too focused because you're going so fast. But this was different, and I knew it was going to be really beautiful, and I did really try to like take it in. I think I seriously took 2 pictures of the whole thing, which is pretty bad for me, but thankfully there's photographers. But yeah, I've never, like, maybe parts of this and that here and there, but yeah, those big valleys, and also just the way the clouds were too, just the lighting made it, I think, even more intense and beautiful. Like, it was overcast but red skies that just went crazy with these huge like erosion valleys. Like yeah, if you see photos, it barely does it justice, and the photos are stunning. So just kind of extrapolate from that, like how incredible it is. And
the event itself, is it pros and citizen racers? Were you one of the few pros there? What's kind of the makeup at the start line?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I was chatting with the organizers, just a couple of really cool guys. Last year they had 3,000 applicants, and they only select 300 riders. So I think they do a really good job of, it's mostly just people there, just trying to get a challenge. And that's exactly what Badlands is, right? It's a challenge. They don't like, I was the first one to finish, but that's all I'm listed as, the first finisher. It's not like I didn't win the race, because they don't list it as a race. It's always kind of funny too, especially as I get into this side of the sport and like transition more and more away from like just pure like speed gravel, we'll call it, like Grand Prix style. It's funny when I hear like professional, because it's like, yes, I get paid to do this for sure. And like on this side of it, professional is a whole different meaning. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean you were pointy end, like super fast. It's like, if you get paid because you're more influencer story based, it's like you're technically also a professional. So I don't actually know how many like pros were there. And then there's other people who like, they do stuff like they have a real job, but then biking's also their thing, because this isn't normal biking. This is like, well, can you ride for 36 hours and not sleep and not stop? Well, that's like pretty effective too. So it's an interesting cross section for sure.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. Did you recognize anybody there as a pro?
Like 2 guys. There's a guy named Ulrich who is sort of like a bit like famous in like the ultra world. And then I knew another guy from Girona, Tristan Cardew. He's kind of a YouTube vlogger, photographer he shot rally when we were in Girona. He's an Aussie guy, good dude. So that was it. And then Cynthia, who won the women's race. I knew her, but I didn't know anybody else, which is super weird, because I know like most people I race against in North America.
Yeah, one of the hard bits about going to a race that you can't see in person beforehand is recon, like learning as much as you can, getting intel so you can make informed choices about yourself, about how you're going to train, about your bike, about travel, about where you're all of it. So how did you handle it this, and do you feel like you were successful in kind of decoding this thing before you got there?
No, my recon was terrible. I was like, I have a pretty I used to be better when I road raced, but I have a pretty lackadaisical / like just in over my head approach to a lot of these events. And this is just like any normal gravel race times 10, well, like times 20. Like, I looked at the route. This is going to sound so bad. I looked at the route and tried to figure out where I was going to stop at 9:00 the night before the race. And like I scribbled it down. I have this little notebook, and I scribbled it down and then took a photo of it, which is terrible. So yeah. that was about as shoot from the hip as it gets. Thankfully I had Seb who from Schwabe who won it last year, so he kind of gave me his cheat sheet. So I had that to go off of, kind of. And they give you kind of another cheat sheet as well that shows basically the towns that you pass through that could have water and like, you know, restaurants or grocery stores or something on the way. But it all went out the window because we went so much faster at the start that we were so far ahead of schedule. The place where they usually stop for like dinner and like before when people were logical and they'd stop and have a meal, like even like the plan I had, we were probably 2 or 3 hours ahead of time when we got to this place called Gore, and we went in there and I was only with one other guy at this point, and he's just like in and out. I got a set like a bocadillo, like meat sandwich, and just was like a Coke, and that was it, and he was gone. And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, it is 6:30 at night. The next town we go through is going to be like, it's going to be closed. Like, and then we're in the night and we don't have food for like 13 hours. Like, I don't know are your bags full of food? So it's like, even if I had a plan, it was like, it's sort of like, what's the Mike Tysonism? It's like everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Basically the first 12 hours was getting punched in the mouth, and then was just like, all right, I guess, I don't know, ketosis, like just live off the fat of my body, because that was what it came down to. And then, yeah, I knew Almeria, I could get food in Almeria, so I just had to make it 500K into the day.
All right, Rob, I have one more question too about recon and getting to know this thing. Were there resupplies out there that you were planning around?
Yes, I mean, so Badlands is self-supported, so you can kind of stop wherever you want. I was with 2 Spanish dudes, and they had a much better plan than I did, and they also spoke Spanish, which was pretty handy. So yeah, I had 2 spots for sure I wanted to stop at. One was about 165K in, and the other one's like 265 or 300 or something like that. And the second one was kind of, that's your last stop before you pretty much go into the night. Years past, that's been like closer to sunset. And this year it was like 6 o'clock or 6:30. So we were significantly like 2 or 3 hours ahead of time. So, and we were very quick in and out of both. The first like rest stop, I wouldn't even say it was rest. Like over there, like you go into like there are like these little bars, and like it's super annoying because it's on a Sunday. So like, yeah, if you've ever been to Spain on a Sunday, it's like it's not a lot of open. Like, so you're just like, come on, man, really? But so the first place we went into, and like that's why I laugh when they say rest stop. It's like we just looked like the Tasmanian devil. It was just in there, like water. Okay, here's money. Okay, Cokes, cool. Yep. Back out. Like fill your bottle. Like, and you were on. Like you were going. And then we kind of split up at that point. There was 3 of us initially when we went in, and the one guy was just like gone. And then myself and one other fellow, he waited for me. Thankfully, I wasn't slow. I just needed to actually take time to put the water in the bottle. And we were maybe a minute behind this guy, and it took me, I dropped the guy I was with, and I never saw him again for the rest of the event. And then it took me like an hour to close this like 1 minute or 30-second gap. Like it just, because you never want to surge on these things, right? You want to kind of minimize that big effort. But yeah, so there's 2 spots. Yeah, one, pretty early-ish, like maybe 6 hours in, 7 hours in, and the other one like 10 hours in. And that was it. I stopped in a few towns just to get water, because every town in Spain has like these little water fountains, kind of you just have to look for them. And usually they're on the main strip, or they did a good job of routing you past, so you just have to keep your eyes open. Okay. Because that was the biggest thing. Even though it wasn't hot, you got to watch hydration.
Mm-hmm. So with what you were able to learn about Badlands, about how difficult it was, what you were up against terrain-wise, climbing-wise, heat-wise, weather-wise, how did you get your body and mind prepared? I mean, you've been racing this year. Folks should know. Rob's been in the Grand Prix. He's been doing other racing. He won this home race, by the way. Congrats, Rob. BWR BC. Terrific. Well, maybe hardest thing to do in professional sports is win your hometown race, and he did. But how did you otherwise, Rob, get ready for Badlands? Let's talk about physically first.
Yeah, so I didn't really know the best way to get ready for something like this. It's how do you get ready for a 2-day race, right? But inadvertently, it just ended up being like, so I did a big ride in July. That was probably the best prep for it. So that was 700K across Vancouver Island. And then I did, I guess, BC bike race, mountain bike stage race. That's one thing. But what I did inadvertently that wasn't planned, but it ended up being probably great prep was almost a 2-week altitude camp where I was up pretty high the whole time. Like I went to Leadville and then SBT. So, and that was effectively just about 2 weeks on the nose, which is pretty bang on for like a little altitude bump, especially at those kind of elevations. And Leadville hurt a lot because I went up like 2 days before, so that was spicy.
Yep.
And then Steamboat, I was really coming around. I felt a lot more like myself at altitude. And then I came home and just relaxed. I went into Badlands super fresh. Like we went to Girona for a week before, just to kind of get over, like, there's a balance between a little vacation with my wife, also getting used to being in Europe again, and a bit of heat acclimation, which didn't really matter because it was cold the first day. So yeah, that was the prep, was a little altitude camp. I did a big ride before, similar distance and time. So mentally I knew what to expect to those big fatigues. And then just going into it, I felt like going into it fresh had to be the best option. Fresh and like fat. I probably gained 5 or 6 pounds, no joke, in Girona before.
Oh.
Just not restricting diet or anything, having a couple cervezas each day, like just being happy. And like,
sure, because
I knew the likelihood of, like, you just go so deep on these things, like you're going to burn it off. Like it was a 25,000 calorie burn for that event. So,
and you have bikepacking experience too. Was there any crossover there from what you learned as a bikepacker to being able to knock off an event like this? Okay,
yeah. You need it's like you got to strap stuff to your bike. Like you need extra clothes. That's a big part of it, especially this year with the rain on the first day, and then like some pretty big temperature changes from like borderline cold to extremely hot, and just wet as well. So having like I like to go with 2 pairs of shorts. It's just a nice option. The second pair usually being like an ultralight set just for when it gets really hot. And just a fresh hammy is nice to have, and it takes up no space. But yeah, having an idea of how to pack the bike. So you have stuff that's like readily accessible. You have to have a battery pack to charge things. Just being used to handling the bike when it has an extra like 10 to 15 pounds worth of weight strapped to it, where you want to put that weight. Out of stuff like aero bars, just these kind of things. It's important to have a bit of a knowledge and how to pack, where to pack, like if you carry a hydration pack or not, or just rely on bottles, or like putting a bladder somewhere else in the bike. All of these things kind of like weigh into your decision of what you bring, because you want to bring as little as you can, because you're carrying this around for 2 days. So yeah, having bike packing knowledge is definitely good.
Well, let's move on to the machine then. The bicycle itself. Let's see how you set that up. First of all, what was your frame? What is the foundation here? What's the frame you chose?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through the bike build. So it's a Factor Austro Gravel, so it's their aero gravel race bike. I ride a 56 just because I do like a drop, and I don't like it to be super long. So it's that's a good size for me. I run it with because it's an aero frame. It's very similar to the Austro VAM, like their super aero road race bike. So everything is internal, all the housing, all the cables. So that goes through the bar. side note, I managed to pinch one of my shifter wires the day before in my stem.
No.
So
Oh no.
that was probably the most like stressed I've been before a bike race before in my life, because I've never really had to work on that stuff inside of a frame before. So that was, yeah, experience. But yeah, so take me to the cockpit. Yeah, integrated bar stem with their integrated aero bars. So they bolt right onto the bar. That's black ink. And then drivetrain is a mix of Shimano GRX DI.
Before you get to drivetrain, how tall are you?
I am 6'1".
So 6'1" on a 56. Okay, so you like to get, if you can, you like to get low and let aero be your friend.
Yeah, and I mean it's still they did a really good job on it. So you're not super slammed. The stack is still pretty decent on this bike. I'm more comfortable on this 56, significantly more so than on like the 56 Ostrovam. Like this stack and reach is very similar to my 58 LS, like factor LS. So yeah, yeah, for sure there's a big drop visually, but I've also got pretty long arms too. So it's yeah, it does fit me quite well.
And the Badlands course told you when you recon that, yeah, I'm going to need to cheat the wind out there. Despite how it looks, I mean, when you look at the picture, you see hilly and, you know, all those canyons, but there were some spots where you wanted to be in those aero bars and cooking.
Yeah, I mean, it's aero bars. This is going to sound so lame, but I've like heard them called comfort sticks before, and I think that's the stupidest name ever, but
nope.
It's like they are actually like you just get blown out like holding yourself up for so long. Like it's so nice, even if you're just coasting, to take the weight off and like kind of just like rest on your skeleton. And that's really what they are at. I'd say probably 50% of the reason why I have them is just to give my like upper body a break, my head a break, and hang your head a bit, and just like relax just for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so, Jenny Graham, who owns the women's record for riding around the world, calls them the same thing. She put them on her bike. It was a road bike. She said, they're not aero bars to me. They're comfort bars. That's why I rode them. And she spent months out there riding around. So, yeah, I think there's absolutely, I think the Unbound XL people will tell you the same thing, right? Those people riding 250 miles. They're like, look, I just needed a position that's not putting pressure on my hands. And this is the way you achieve that. So, yeah. So take us to drivetrain then. How are we shifting? How are we moving that bike forward?
Yeah. So it's Shimano GRX Di2, and I've got kind of a whole mix of stuff. So shifters and derailleur and brakes are all Shimano GRX, and then I run it as a 1x with Easton EC90 SL cranks. I had a 48 tooth front chainring. In hindsight, I probably could have dropped it down to a 46, but I had already dropped it down from a 50. Usually I run a 50 on the front. Okay. The rear is, and this is sort of like my secret weapon, or at least not so secret now. It's a classified power shift hub. So that is an 1134 cassette, but the power shift is a 2-speed internal hub, wireless shifting. So that drops it down to pretty much like a 32. It's like slightly bigger than 32, but slightly smaller than 33 virtual chainring. So that's slightly easier than a 1-to-1 ratio. And most stuff that I've ridden, if it's like harder than a 1-to-1, you're barely getting it. Like you're almost closer to just walking it. But after doing Badlands, it's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it's like you're just out there for so long. Like just having a little bit easier gear just makes your life that much easier.
Sure.
So that's drivetrain. And then, wheels are my EC90 Easton AX rims. And tires, I ran Schwabe G1 RS in the 45C. And then probably a double dose, effectively, of the SILCA sealant. And then also the hot wax chain. I came to Europe with a fresh wax chain. Probably did about 200 kilometers on the chain prior to the event. So for 2 days before, I actually put on twice a day. I'd put on the secret chain coating, let it cure because you want at least 12 hours. So kind of put one on in the morning after my ride and then in the evening. Like it seems like overkill, but I knew the weather was going to be pretty grim or was likely to be grim and it turned out to be that way.
Yeah.
So just trying to make sure that chain was just as like close to fresh wax as it could possibly be at the start. And then during the race, I used the Synergy just lube to top it up, I think 3 or 4 times. And it was silent. I couldn't believe how like effective that was. Like even I've experienced the wax chain. I'm like definitely a convert, but the wax chain with the Syn lube is like unbelievably effective.
Yeah, well, I as opposed to dragging over a crock pot, obviously, which can be cumbersome, going to Europe,
Yeah.
you did the next best thing, which is go over the hot wax chain and then ride the bike and then replace whatever small amount of wax is shedded away with some super secret drip lube. Let it cure. Keep doing the same thing as much as you ride until you get the start line, and then carry the synergetic wet lube with you as you ride the day. And that's something we've discussed a lot on this show, like how to hack that drivetrain situation when you know you're going to be out there for an Unbound or an Unbound XL or a Badlands, where for sure, no matter whose lube you're running, you're gonna go through that stuff. It's just not going to last a day, and you got to find a way. Because I'm sure you can tell us that a noisy drivetrain will drive you at the wall, and a slow drivetrain will just sap your legs. Right? It's just important to be using those pedal strokes efficiently.
Yeah, you're out there for so long. It's like, you listen to music for some of it, but yeah, a noisy drivetrain, especially like, everyone knows the sound. If you've ever done like an Unbound especially the last 2 years, where you get basically your drivetrain gets wet at the start and you just burn. Like I've used other like brands of wax chains in the past, and it's like, God, you burn through it in like 100K, and then it's just bone dry, and you're just left with this sound of like creaky metal. And you're almost wondering, like, am I going to break my chain? Like, is this is my drivetrain going to explode?
Yeah.
And this is just like, it's amazing. The second you hear any noise, which is because you see pretty bad, you just like give it a quick spin with a Synergic lube, and yeah, problem solved.
Now, you're the first person we've had on the show who's been on the classified rear hub. We've, obviously a lot of us have seen and read a lot about it. So is there anything from an experience level, like how it rides, that you could tell the audience about that differs from maybe having a front chain ring or just one by only? Is there a feeling that it presents at all?
Yeah. Think of like the smoothest front shift you've ever had in your life, but then apply like full force and being able to do it instantaneously whenever you want, like under like any circumstances without fail. It's almost like the equivalent of like when you see someone hop on an e-bike for the first time, they kind of just laugh because it's just, you're like, oh, this isn't like real. And that's like the power shift hub. You're so used to a front rail, and even a good one, there's still that like, and you're never doing it under, like 450 watts or something over the top of a climb. You still have to back it off. And with the power shift, you can do it like either like, there's been times where I've come into something and you're like, oh shoot, like that's a wall of like loose boulders, and I dropped into this in like, mid cassette in my 50, and you just tap it, and then boom, instantly you have a super easy gear. You never have to worry about your chain dropping. You're always in a more optimized chain position, right? Like a bigger chain ring it makes for a more optimized like amount of like, I can't remember the chain bend. So, but yeah, the mechanics of it are instantaneous, and yeah, in my experience with Outlaw, like I had a few times last year where I had dropped chains, but that was kind of on me. I didn't dial in chain tension, or I had an older GRX derailleur that needed a rebuilt clutch, and because I don't know what I'm doing, or at least didn't realize you have to actually rebuild those, just like any other mechanical thing. So that was kind of on me. But since then, yeah, I've been like crazy impressed with the system.
Mm-hmm. I think you said when you were going over your stuff, you're on 45 Schwalbe's. And how about
Yep.
tire pressure? How did you arrive at a number that felt like it was the right one for the day?
Oh, it was tough because you're out there for so long. You're going to have some leakage. A lot of the course is fast, but then it's again, it's so long, and there are sections that are super rough. I went high, so I'd rather take a bit more beating in the body than have to plug a tire. They're really good, but I mean, it doesn't matter how good a tire is. Once you get tired and you start like sending it down some of these, you can rim out pretty easily. So I went 28 or 27 in the front and 30 in the rear, which is pretty hard for 45 still. But I think this happens a lot, actually. I think I had a little puncture, and the sealant is so good, it just like catches it right away. And you only find out afterwards because you'll be washing your bike off and the dirt goes, and then there's like those little bits of latex like on your seat tube or on your down tube that you didn't even know because the sealant just like catches it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, people always will ask, well, is tubeless worth the hassle? And you kind of got to answer, well, it's hard to tell because you don't know how many flats you didn't get, right? You can never count those. It's really hard to come up with that number. So you just kind of go, yeah, it's especially in a situation like Badlands or any rough terrain where, you know, sharp edges are coming up at you right and left, and you got to err on the side of yes for that answer. And how about any tire inserts, or you just went with tubeless only?
Tubeless only. Schwalbe is very much the stance that tire liners are not ideal for gravel.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. That's just their belief. They feel like the tire loses its ability to conform to the ground, and like you're adding rolling resistance, you're adding weight. Obviously, there's a whole other side of that argument, but no tire inserts. The team issue tires. We are unlucky; they have bead to bead protection in them, so they're a little bit overbuilt compared to what you'd buy in a store. They're a little bit heavier, but it gives you just a bit more protection because just the level we push the equipment, it's harder than what most people would kind of push their tires to.
Sure. Yeah. And then did you have, again, you may have said this already, but you had bags on the bike, right? Just real quick, what kind of luggage did you have strapped to the bike?
Yeah, so I had Apodura Racing Series bags. So the racing frame bag, a little bento box in the top, and then just a I want to say 7-liter-ish seat bag. And that was more than enough. The seat bag was probably only half full, 2/3 full. So it rolled down pretty compact. Although that filled up as jackets got wet, and like I was pretty lazy putting them in. But yeah, frame bag was good. And then also I ran their hydration pack. So
cool. And how about a wardrobe lineup? What I can imagine on a day like this, you were trying to cover a lot of bases. So what all did you have on and take with you?
Yeah, so on me to start, I had Castelli Free Aero bibs and Free Aero Race, like my team jerseys. This is like full on, like super tight race kit. They're freshies. I think I'd only ridden them once each, so shorts were like primo. And then I think within the first 30 minutes, I'd already put on my Profetto vest. So that's a GABA type vest.
Sure.
I had gloves on, just short finger, but I had like with pads. Like not usually for most gravel races, I won't run a padded glove. I just like having a bit of protection in case you ever crash. But this, I actually ran pads. Just I've had issues with numb hands on these big events before. Then in the bag, and I went through most of this stuff. I had arm warmers, the Castelli puffy jacket. It's like Primo Alpha, like insulated. And then what else? Then their shake dry jacket, Gore-Tex shake dry jacket. So, and then a hat, just like a regular cycling cap. I
Okay.
had leg warmers, didn't use them. I had long finger gloves in case it got really weird out there. And then I had a second chamois that I did swap out to, which was probably the most liberating thing I did on that ride. Was just,
Really? Yeah.
yeah, just it's something special when you can just be in the middle of nowhere, kind of, yeah, change your chamois out and just for a second just be comfortable before you go back to, yeah, the challenge of the ride.
Yep. I've done it on much shorter rides than that. A little tour of the Alps I did one day, and I was like, you know what? I'm changing my shorts, and it felt good. You're right. Headed for the Galibier, feeling much better.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly.
Um, so, you know, we shouldn't skip over a very important thing, even though we love tech and gear. What type of fueling strategy were you going with?
Yeah, this is actually a really good question. So I'm sponsored by First Endurance. But that being said, I find with these events, it's really like, and I think most people tell you this, like, it's really hard to go full like short distance racing fuel stuff. It's just hard on your stomach, regardless. And that's not a First Endurance or like Cliff Bar, Morton, anything is the same. You can't do that for 24 hours, or at least I can't. So I really just I ran mix in the first two bottles and a hydration pack because I know that I can get away with that. And then after that, I was just using like a basic electrolyte tab, and so that was my hydration taken care of. And even still, I had to double down on it because I was still cramping in the last 12 hours, just little bits, but it was a fine line. Probably because my fuel intake was so minimal. And then it was just a mix of bars, kind of like Haribo gummy candies, and then I had I think a croissant at one place,
Oh,
like
good.
a couple like bocadillo, just like baguette and like nice ham and cheese sandwiches. Um, which when you're dehydrated is probably one of the hardest things to eat. You can barely swallow. And then early on, actually, I just got this craving for salt, and I pulled over to a bar. Um, they didn't speak a word of English, and I don't speak a word of Spanish, so we just got by pointing. Um, and I bought like this bag of potato chips. It was like the size of my body for like €1, and I just remember like smashing these things, and my mouth was so dry instantly. And it's like everything about Badlands is hard. So I'm like eating them, but then I couldn't swallow, so I like kind of spit them out, and then like this went on for a while. It was just this like yeah purgatory of like yeah potato chip hell. But yes, it was, and then the biggest thing was like I stopped in Almeria and I think I spent like $40 at a gas station. I was like, give me that American food. I want Snickers, I want Cokes, Gatorades, like more candy, like, and that got me through. I kid you not, like the rest of the ride. I was just like, I was so happy. I'm like, this is what I know.
Mm,
Like, I don't have to like use any broken English. It's like I can just go in here and pick from my like sugary buffet, put it all down there, and just like
yeah,
fill my pockets, and then happy as a clam after that.
yeah. I think if you just say este, and point at things, I think you'll get kind of far. I learned that in France. Ça, s'il vous plaît. You just point at things, and they'll generally pull the
Yeah.
right thing out of the counter. Well,
Perfect.
that's cool
Yeah.
though. You got some little local flair in there, some local food along with stuff you know, and performance nutrition. So you didn't bonk, right? I mean, everything gut wise went
No,
okay
that
on the
was
day.
I was
Okay.
yeah, it was actually pretty solid. I don't know how I did, and I think um yeah, it was. I'm sure I came close, and I would just like when we went through the night that first night. I just remember thinking to myself like, I don't have food for this. Like, I do not have 13 hours worth of food, and I have a meat sandwich and like two bananas in my pocket and a Coke. I'm like, that's like 700 calories. Like, that's an hour. So, yeah, that was all. I didn't bonk is, I don't know. Yeah, borderline miracle, but yeah, just pacing strategy, I guess.
Right. Well, it was a 38-hour day and then some. Give us I guess, the shorter version. We don't have 38 hours, but we have a few more minutes here for sure. So take us through the day. I mean, what are the things now, and I don't know how many weeks out from the event, that really stick out in your mind as you rode that course?
Yeah, so yeah, it's been good to I've had a bit of time to think about it. The start was interesting. We went up pretty hard, I think by everyone's standards. I think we averaged like I think normalized was just under 300 watts for the first 5 hours, which is like pretty good for even like a normal gravel race, not one that takes you through the night. Um, so in my head, I was just thinking like, well, this is probably if it suits anyone, it's going to suit me because this is what I'm used to. So just kind of got on with that. I remember reading the race report from the year before when the guy who won Seb, um, he was solo after 180K. So I kind of figured that's a good mark to see where I'm at. And I was with one other guy after 180K. It was good. It was actually really nice to have company. And we changed the lead like 5 times or something. We just kept going back and forth, like not through any like attacks or anything. It's like I would get ahead because I would just get a bit of a gap. And then I'd be like, oh, I need to stop for water. So I'd pull in, and then he would go past me when I was getting water in the town. And then I'd catch him again. And like, so we just did this, or like we'd be on a climb and he would be riding like 2 watts harder than I wanted to go. And I just couldn't close the gap. Like for, and like, we were sitting like 10 bike lengths apart for like 3 hours and finally it spread out. Yeah. Then, I mean, probably the most significant thing is just how you're going to react through the night. Most the guy I was with had never gone race through the night. I mean, most people haven't until they have, right? So that's always pretty unique. Is just yeah, riding your bike through the darkness. This event was particularly like, with the weather. We had like acute darkness at both ends of the spectrum, like maximum darkness because it was so overcasty. Like when you have like clear skies, you get kind of a buffer on both ends. It's lighter early. It's lighter deeper into the night. Like you get more dusk, and then dawn comes a lot earlier. Whereas this was the opposite. It was overcast at both ends. So like my light's only good for 6 hours, which is better than most. Most people's lights are like, but mine's good for 6. And sure enough, at like 6 hours, it dropped. And I was just like, oh shit, I still have like 2 hours. Like, and it's still dark, like fully dark. And it's like, it's not like you're just cruising on like a road. Like you still have to navigate all this stuff. So, you're looking down at your head unit, trying to figure out like, and some of them aren't major roads. Like you'll be riding, like ripping down like a paved road or something at like 35 miles an hour. And then out of the blue, there's just a hole in the bush and you just cut through this thing. And then you're riding on like, this network of like crisscrossed, like sandy trails down to the sea. And you're just supposed to use interpretation to figure out which one you take. And like, this is all with my headlamp now because my main light died. So, and I'm thinking to myself, like, how long does this headlamp last for? All right, well, I'm gonna figure it out, I guess. So I'm charging my, bar light at the time while I'm using the headlamp. But anyway, make it through, and it's probably a decent amount of swearing, to be honest, as I'm like trying to like figure this out and get turned around. And I'm like, what the hell is that sound? And it was the ocean. I'd like ridden, like I'm like, am I at a waterfall? But it was just like the sea breaking on the shore. But you're in the dark, so you don't know. And then I got zoomed out in the head unit, and you're just like, oh, right, I'm at the coast. And I was like, this is great, and didn't realize I'd still go all the way back in. And like it was like 3 hours before I was going to be at Almeria. So yeah, and then yeah, the first night I made it through pretty smoothly. Adrenaline, you get pretty like excited while you're riding at night. Like it feels cool. I got hit by 2 birds, which is kind of a interesting highlight, like big like pheasants, like the size of my head. One, and it was like on this bike path, it just one smoked me in the knee. It's like kind of shook me, and then like seconds later, there was another one that just jumped up from the ground, and I like bashed off my head, and I kind of forgot about it until like the next day when I took my glasses out finally, and there was feathers in my helmet. So, that was pretty wild. Yeah, and then you sun starts to come up. You can finally cut the headlamp. Go along this beach forever. A lot of people didn't like the beach. I didn't mind. Like it was fine. Like there was a little bit of hike and bike, but it was fine.
So by the time you hit morning, how many hours? I guess it would be the
24.
second morning. You're 24 in by the time you hit dawn the next day.
Basically, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I say, sunrise was at like 6:30 or sorry, 7:30 or 7:15. So, and sunset was like, it was like right at 9 o'clock. It was supposed to, the next day I pushed it to like 10, probably 10 o'clock. I had like an extra hour. But yes, and I was terrified the next day that my headlamp was going to cut out. So yeah, anyway, got through to Almeria, stocked up on snacks big time. I never checked my, tracker to see where anybody else was. They could have been 10 minutes behind me the whole time and I would have not known. Like, um, so I went through Almeria, filled up with as much food as I figured I could carry. Um, got some like kind of whatever their Gatorade and got on the merry way. And this climb out of Almeria is just like, oh, it's like a punch in the gut. It's like an hour plus, hour and a half, and you're just on this like never ending grade. It's kind of blown out, like blast rock style, and you just like, it shakes you like for hours, and you're so deep into the ride, like you're just kind of cracked. And I think 2/3 the way up that, I finally just said like, "Hey, I need a break," and that's when I swapped shorts, which was pretty lovely. After that, you're kind of in the home stretch, last like under 200K to go. And that's when it got really hot. And I actually had two separate 7-minute naps. It sounds hilarious that it's only 7 minutes, but it's like it makes all the difference in the world. Like you just set a timer on your phone, like lay down, usually in the shade, and it's like you're so tired, you're just out and wake up, feel great. Gets rid of like those like long yawns and like just sort of that deep, heavy eye fatigue. I had to stop for, I finally checked the thing. So I had like a 24-kilometer gap on second place. I felt like that was significant, like at least an hour and a half, closer to 2 hours. So I had a pretty casual dinner. I wanted to just like take the load off my body and like my nervous system before the final push because I heard it was quite hard. And thank God I did because it was horrible. Oh my God, this one climb. I don't know if it was one of those ones that's so steep it's concrete up most of it because otherwise it would wash away and vehicles couldn't get up it. So yeah, that was heinous. It was only like 5 or 8K, but I swear it took me an hour just to move up this stupid thing. And I started to get cramps on the way up it. And like, oh, this is going sideways real fast. Then, yeah, you kind of get into that last 120K and it was sun setting. This was really pretty. And it was like way nicer now. It was like kind of 25 degrees. And you go through this final town, call it like Ham Town. It's where they do like all the cured ham, or like that's their big thing in the town. So there's all these like pig statues everywhere, which is cool. Like right as the sunset, and you do one last final climb. You get up onto a ridge, and then it's cool. The time you finish in, you just descend down into it, and like the second I got clear, like I got onto pavement and it was like clear sailing, it was just like full send for the last 5 or 10 minutes into town, it's just such a sweet feeling because you know you're done. Like, you know, effectively like won, but you're just also effectively done suffering. And I got in and my wife was there waiting with some beer and pizza, which may have been the best pizza I've ever had.
I think I saw a picture.
Yeah, that was that. Like,
yeah. I think I saw a picture on your Instagram of you wolfing down a pizza and having an appropriate beverage after that event.
Yes.
And you did look extremely satisfied and glad to be done with it. And you called it the hardest thing you've ever done, right? I mean, that's how you label it.
It's definitely the hardest race I've ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It pushes you mentally, probably. Like physically for sure, but mentally it's just it's a different kind of suffer than like a road race or a gravel race.
And can you explain why that is? Like what makes it you? Because you've been through stage races and had to hang with the best of them, and you've been out there killing yourself in the Lifetime Grand Prix, FKTs. What does this draw out of a person that you just can't find anywhere else?
Yeah, it's just the duration of it. Like, you know, you're going for multiple days, like sleep deprivation. That's a big one. Anytime you have to like push through a night without sleep and you're awake for over 24 hours, your body hates you, your mind hates you more. It's effectively just such a huge load on your central nervous system as well, that you probably shouldn't do. Like, it's not good for you. But yeah, and and you can't, like, especially just because the way, at least I'm wired, and I think most people in these things are, it's like you're competitive and you are racing, so you kind of push it, and so you're kind of on it all the time, which is, again, it's a huge load on your, like, central nervous system and also, like, your body. So you do this for 24, 36, 48 hours, like, that stuff is crazy hard. And there's after the event too, like after Unbound or like SBT or any like other gravel race or stage race, like stage race always takes me like a week to like kind of return to normal, like hormones and stuff, or fatigue, generally speaking. But within it, like, you can ride the day after any of the hardest stage races I've ever done. Like, you can ride the day after, you're fine. Like, you're tired, you don't feel good, but you can do it. Like, the day after Badlands, I couldn't walk downstairs. There's so much like soft tissue damage. It's insane. Your fatigue is like off the charts, like cognitively, like you could, like, driving a car wouldn't be safe, kind of thing. Skill testing questions are difficult. You're so hungry. I mean, remember the next morning, it's like I just felt nauseous. I was just starving. You're dehydrated. Like, my hands were numb, like my fingers, my foot's still a bit tingly. So there's like all these like borderline, like, long-term effects from this kind of stuff. Plus, you like destroy your circadian rhythm. No other bike races make you like, get jet lag without actually traveling anywhere.
Yeah. And when you're in those moments when, every part of you is saying, stop this, shut it down, you're doing something that no one should do to them, what do you tell yourself? How did you talk yourself into moving forward?
I mean, they're all just like kind of corny quotes, but like, at the time, simple's good. So it's like, usually it's just like, shut up. Like the old Yenzi, just like, okay, stop, like, whatever, man. It's like you get into some pretty good, like, internal battles. It's like, and like, sometimes they're not internal, sometimes they're like fully audible because you haven't talked to anybody for 10 hours, so you talk to yourself. But it's just like shut up and get on with it. Like, you decided to do this, so like, just get it done. You're gonna be out here for a while. It's gonna hurt for a while, but then it's over. And it's like, yeah, like, I love this, like, this suffering, this sort of just, pain. It sounds weird, but yeah, I just dig it. So like those, and you can only get to these like weird, like, dark places by doing it. There's no like substituting it in training. And it's like, you're only there for a little bit, but that's a pretty special place when you're just like, when you push past that, like I'm so screwed right now, and just like actually kind of like being in that moment and like taking it in. Yeah. Like, it's not for everyone, but for me, I kind of dig it.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea too. Some people say just set small goals. As you're in those moments, just say, just head over to the next town or to the next aid station or to the next corner, and just make it there, and then set the next one and set the next one, and just keep doing the work. And hopefully at some point you've covered 466 miles by setting those little goals. I know it's still soon after, and you've got other things on your calendar, but is it one of those events that you're like one and done? Would you go back? Would you do something similar? Where's your mindset right now?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny. Like, I am doing another one at the end of the year across Andes down in Patagonia. So that'll be a whole other kind of different. It's 1,000K, a little bit less climbing, I think a little bit more road. So we'll see. But right now I'm just like, that's such a bad idea. Oh man, I hope my body's recovered by then. Because I genuinely don't think these things are like good for you long, like, big picture. It's like, they're unique and it's cool, and I still want to do it, but I also don't think like doing a grand tour is healthy for you either. But
sure.
like they're also, I mean, they seem like they're pretty rad too. But yeah, I'm definitely pretty curious about these ultra things because they're after a career of bike racing and a lot of different experiences, these are still new to me.
Yeah, we've all been keeping our eye on Lachlan Morton, and I've wondered throughout his adventures, like, man, I hope he's taking care of himself. Like, I hope this isn't too much because we love the guy and he's fun to watch. But man, it'd be hurtful to see something bad happen to not only him but any athlete who does. Lael Wilcox is in the same boat. Like, she just goes, and you're thinking, okay, I just hope that there's not any long-term permanent damage going on there because it is very, very tough on oneself to knock these things out. Rob, before we let you go, I know that a lot of folks in Canada look for warmer places to visit when they go on vacation, and for you, I noticed that Hawaii has become one of your spots. A lot of us saw what happened in Maui and Lahaina. I've been to Lahaina. It was the first time I ever went to the islands. It was Lahaina and that area, and I know that place has a special spot in your heart, and I think you've tried to guide people in ways that they can help out Maui and Lahaina. Did you want to give that a mention at all?
Yeah, I think it's still attached to my bio. The actual link is escaping me at the moment, but basically it's a pretty direct line to like money in to money out directly to residents of the Maui fires. Because yeah, it's kind of the simplest way. Like, it's a freaking island in the middle of the ocean, so donating, like, it's not the same as donating food or canned goods and stuff like this, clothes. Like, that's going to take forever to get to them, whereas cash is kind of king. It'll fix, it bridges the gap right now. It puts them up in a hotel. It gets like them gift cards to a grocery store so they can actually buy food. But yeah, and honestly, like, I don't know if this is right, but maybe not traveling there for a little bit and giving it a bit of time to heal is probably not such a bad idea because yeah, it's a pretty horrible thing. Like, I mean, it's just gone. Like, you're not like fixing stuff. You're like rebuilding an entire community, which is on an island in the middle of the ocean. So it's not like they can just go to the Home Depot and get lumber at it. Like, at this rate, it's like, this is going to take years to fix. So yeah, I think cash is probably these things. It's like, it's something that's hard. I know everybody's tight for cash right now. It's the most expensive time of all time right now. But yeah, also kind of put yourself in their shoes. Like, it's the most expensive time for them, and now they have nothing. They lost everything. So yeah, helps a lot.
Yeah, it is in Rob's bio, by the way, folks. Go to his Instagram account, check out his bio, and you'll find a link there to how to help Maui, help them get over a truly devastating situation. All right, Rob Britton, you've got more on your plate, on your calendar. We hope to see you in the Andes. That would be cool. And we'll circle back with you, too, soon and get the full Rob Britton story because there's a lot more to it, folks. So thanks for being on the Marginal Gains podcast, Rob.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.